Chapter 11.4, Subtracting Integers. So the only vocab for today is the key concept on subtracting integers and the different ways to do it depending on whether your numbers are positive or negative. But we're going to come back to this in a minute. Excuse me. So let's go ahead and start with example 1. So use a number line to find 3 minus negative 2. So I'm going to use my little guy on a number line. So imagine you're outside on the blacktop and we've drawn a number line. And you're going to start at 0 because that's where we always start. And you're going to move this way to 3. Because you're going to start here on the number 3 and you're going to stand there. Because you have 3 things that you have where you're starting at the number 3. And then because I'm subtracting here, you're going to turn around. Because when we subtract, we move to the left down the number line. So you're going to turn around like you're going to go left, like your number is going to get smaller, because that's what we do when we subtract. Only we're going to throw in a little wrench and we're going to subtract a negative, which means instead of walking 2 this way and ending up at 1, you're going to move backwards. So you're going to face left, but you're going to move right. And you are actually going to end up at 5. So 3 minus negative 2 is actually equal to 5. So why is that? How does that work? Let's go back to the key concepts of subtracting integers. So yesterday, or when you looked at 11.3, you learned to add. So for example, 3 plus 2 equals 5. Negative 3 plus negative 2 equals negative 5. So you learned to add. You also learned that 3 plus negative 2 is equal to 1. You learned that if the signs are alike, that you just add like normal and keep the sign that the two numbers share. Both 3 and 2 are positive here, so your 5 is positive. Both 3 and 2 here are negative, so your 5 is also negative. But we learned that when signs were unlike, not unlikes, there we go, that you subtract and keep the sign of the greater absolute value. So for example, 3 minus 2 equals 1, but 3 has the greater absolute value, the negative 2, so 3 is positive, so my answer stays positive. So what does that have to do with subtracting integers? Well, subtraction no longer exists. Instead of subtracting, we are going to turn everything into adding the opposite. I'm actually going to highlight that for you. Everything is now adding its opposite. So here are some examples. 10 minus 6. Everyone knows that 10 plus 6 or minus 6 is 4. And for simple problems like that, you are welcome to keep it as subtraction, but we're going to use it for examples today. So what does it mean by adding its opposite? So instead of subtraction, the subtraction sign becomes addition, and instead of positive 6, it becomes negative 6. So the opposite of 6 is negative 6. So the subtraction becomes addition, and the 6 becomes its opposite. Negative 10 minus 6, same thing. This negative 10, I don't touch. It stays exactly the same. But the minus becomes a positive, and the 6 becomes its opposite, or negative 6. Same thing here. 10 minus negative 6, subtraction becomes addition. The negative 6 becomes its opposite of positive 6. Negative 10 minus negative 6, I'm going to add its opposite. Turn the subtraction into addition, and the negative 6 into its opposite of positive 6. So there's a lot going on there. So let's get into examples 2 and 3 and see what that actually looks like. So here we go with example 2. Find negative 8 minus negative 3. So I'm going to, of course, actually going to move this up a little bit. And let's make it a smidge smaller. It's kind of big. So negative 8 minus negative 3. So the first thing I'm going to do is write the original problem. Now I'm going to change colors so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to change to adding the opposite. So instead of subtraction, this negative 8 is going to become positive. And instead of negative 3, I want the opposite, which is positive 3. So notice, in my original problem, I'm actually changing the subtraction to addition and the negative 3 to a positive 3. Now I'm going to rewrite my problem, negative 8 plus 3. I'm going to go back to those signs unlike rule. Subtract and keep the sign with the greater absolute value. So 8 minus 3 equals 5. The negative 8 has the greater absolute value. It's further away from 0. So I'm going to keep the negative sign. Negative 8 plus 3 is negative 5. Negative 8 minus negative 3 is negative 5. Okay, let's try it again with negative 2 minus 7. So, switch back here. Negative 2 minus 7. So again, using a different color, I'm going to add the opposite. Change subtraction to addition, and change the 7 to its opposite, or negative 7. And it's okay to add the parentheses. That's just fine. The parentheses don't change the meaning. So I'll rewrite it. Negative 2 plus negative 7. The signs are alike, both negative, so I'm going to add. 2 plus 7 is 9, and keep the sign they share, which is the negative. All right, so let's put this into action now with example number 3. The submarine Alvin was 1,500 feet below sea level, or negative 1,500. Then it moved to 1,872 feet below sea level. Again, another negative. How far did the Alvin move? So let's talk quickly about sea level and depth. So here's my little sketch. Okay, here's the ocean. Woo, we're boat bobbing along the ocean. Now the submarine is going down. So anytime you go below sea level, we're going below sea level, we're going down. That is negative depth. Okay, when you get deeper, it is negative. When you rise, even if you're rising but not coming all the way back to the surface, it's still a positive depth. Same thing if you're above sea level. If you start at sea level and go up the mountains, up in an airplane, you are adding positive altitude. If you come down, it is negative. Even if you don't get to sea level, even if you land, jump out of a plane and land on a mountaintop, you are still having negative depth. So let's go back to the problem. Alvin was 1,500 feet below sea level. It moved to 1872. How far did it move? So in this kind of a problem, I always take my end depth minus my start depth. Where did I end up? Minus where did I start? So I noticed that I ended here. at negative 1,872 feet. I'm going to subtract my starting depth, which was negative 1,500 feet. So I'm going to change my subtraction to adding the opposite. So instead of subtraction, I'm going to add. Instead of negative 1,500 feet, I want its opposite, which is positive. Now I see that my signs are unlike. I have a negative plus a positive. So I'm going to come over here and subtract 1872 minus 1,500, 273. And I see that I'm at 372. But I keep the sign of the greater absolute value. Well, 1,872 has a greater absolute value. It's negative, so my answer is negative. And of course, don't forget your units. Now, is this reasonable? So, I was 1,500 feet below sea level, and then I moved deeper. So I started here at 1,500 feet, and then I moved down. Since I'm moving down, my depth should be negative. So that does, in fact, make sense. I moved negative 372 feet, or 372 feet deeper. Okay, that's it for examples. I know this lesson can be a little bit confusing, so if you have questions, please come see me. Watch the video more than once. I can also give you some extra practice problems if you need it.